5, 45, 90 triangle. And so when using that triangle, we can say that we can use the formula when looking at that kind of a triangle. We can say that C equals A times the square root of 2. So in looking at this, since we have two angles, 45 degrees and 45 degrees, these are equal, then that means that these legs right here are also going to be equal. So that's why this formula works. So if I say that C equals A times the square root of 2, then what I'm saying in this problem is that since 7 feet is C, I'm saying that 7 equals A times the square root of 2. Now the ultimate goal in this problem right here, as we can see, is that it wants us to find the area of the triangle. Now we have to remember that area is going to be equal to 1/2 base times height. Okay, it's going to be 1/2 base times height. So if I'm looking at this particular problem, then when I look at a problem, right, I look, here's my base. Okay, my base is going to be equal to the length of A. And my height in this particular problem is also going to be equal to the length of A. So we can say that H, my height, is equal to A, and my base is equal to A. So once I find A, then I'll be able to find this formula. I'll be able to solve. So I can look at this another way then, and I can say that A is equal to 1/2 A times A. And you don't have to remember this formula like that, the 1/2 A times A. You don't have to remember it. I just want you to see how they're equivalent. I want you to see how B is going to be equivalent to length A, and that also how H is going to be equivalent to length A. Okay, so they're the same. So I'm just kind of showing you what plugs into where. All right, so let's get back to our original problem. But to determine the area, we must first find A. So we're using our formula. Since we know the hypotenuse is 7, we can say 7 equals A square root of 2. So I want to get A by itself, right, because I have to isolate that variable. So this is what I'm looking for. And I always like to circle. You guys are probably figuring this out now. I like to circle what I'm looking for. And I pretend that circle is like a weight. It's just an anchor, and it keeps that variable right in place. I can't move it. I got to move everything else, though. And so I'm going to take the square root of 2. And then, as always, what I do to one side, I do to the other. And then these square roots will cancel. So what I'm left with, and I'm going to go ahead, remember, multiplicate, it's just a mirror image. I'm going to say A equals 7 over the square root of 2. But I have to keep in mind, I can never have a square root on bottom, right? So now I'm going to use my form of 1. And I'm going to say the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. And the reason this is the form of 1 is because when I come right here, these square roots, if I were to divide them into one another, they would equal 1. All right. So now what I've got to do is I want to take 7 times the square root of 2, which gives me 7 square root of 2 over, and then when I take the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, I have the square root of 4. So I have to look and see if I can simplify this any further. And in this particular case, I'm going to bring this down here, I'm going to say 7 equals the square root of 2. Oops, I'm sorry, it doesn't equal. 7 times the square root of 2 7 times the square root of 2 over, and when I come back up here and I look at my square root of 4, I know what times itself equals 4. Well, 2 times 2 will give me 4, correct? So then my denominator here is going to be 2. And it's completely simplified at this point. So this is what A is. So take a minute and pause and make sure you understand how I determined A. All right, so let's keep going. Now that I've determined A, now I can start looking at my formula for my area. And remember, let me change colors here so maybe you can follow it, separate it a little bit. All right, so remember I'm going to have A equals 1/2 base times my height. But remember, let's go back to what I was saying at the very beginning. B is equal to the length of A, and H is equal to the length of A. So in A is 7 square root of 2 over 2. So if I look at it this way, if I say 7 times square root of 2 over 2 is A, right? And both of these are A. So then I can take that and I can go, okay, well, now I'm going to plug this in for B, and I'm going to plug the other one in for H. And with that, I now say A equals 1/2 times B, or same as A, or same as square root over 2, or 7 times square root of 2 over 2. So 7 square root of 2 over 2. That's my B. Okay, what I did there was just put B in. Now I'm going to put in H, and H also is equal to A, and A is 7 square root of 2 over 2. Okay, so now I have all my numbers in place, and so now I got to start my multiplication process. Start finishing out the problem. So again, you always continue to carry down what you're not solving. It's step by step. So I'm not going to worry about the 1/2 right now or the A. I'm just going to leave it alone. But what I do want to worry about is I'm going to worry about my top for now, and I'm going to say 7 times 7. Okay. So I'm going to have 49 because I'm going to do parentheses first. And then I'm going to say the square root of 2 times the square root of 2. Okay, and that's going to give me the square root of 4 over, I'm going to say 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay, so this is where I'm at so far. So you might want to, if you're not real sure, just pause and kind of look at it and see if you can figure out how everything is. Okay, now if you have that figured out, we're going to go on to the final step, or close to the final step. We're going to say, okay, A is equal to 1/2 Let me back this up. Sorry. Let's do this again. Okay. All right, try this again. Now I'm going to say, I'm going to look at all my top stuff. I'm going to say 1 times 49 square root of 4 is 49 times the square root of 4 over 2 times 4 is 8. Okay, now this then would be equal to 49 times, and you could have done this. I could have done this up here if I chose to, or I could have put it anywhere. Just before I end up finishing out my problem, I need to know that if I look at the square root of 4, it breaks, right? 2 times 2 gives me 4. So then the square root of 4 is 2. So I need to pay attention to that. At some point, you make sure that you take that out. And again, I did it late in the stages. You're more than welcome to do it early. You could have done it up here, okay? Or somewhere in between. You could have created another step in between. So it doesn't matter where, as long as it's done before the final problem. Then I have 8. So now what I have to look at is I got to say, okay, 49 times 2, which equals 98, over 8. So when I finish all this out, if I go and I simplify, and when I divide this out, then my final, and with area, because we're looking for area, we're going to need to convert to decimal point, because we're talking about the area of a room, the area of a floor, the area of a roof, whatever. But when you hear it, you don't hear it in a fraction. So we're going to just divide this out. And when I take 98 divided by 8, I'm going to come out with 12.25. And since we're talking about square feet in this problem, then my units are going to be square feet. Okay, and that concludes number 15 on 4.3. So solve for A, and then you're going to use A to plug in to find your area. And you'll plug A in where your base and your height would be in that formula. Good luck.